For the first time in a seemingly long time, the Adani group of industries seems to be in the news for the right reasons. Recently, in an interview, I think on NDTV, India, the Israeli foreign minister openly came up and complimented the Adani group of industries and added that they are most welcome in Israel, that their investments, such as in Haifa port, etc., are protected and a responsibility. The defense of those investments are a responsibility of the government of Israel, and they have used the Adani group of industries and similar industries in the country as a proxy for good relations with India. So, obviously, when a head of state or an important country in the world, such as Israel, openly comes up and supports and names one of your companies, it is a very, very positive sentiment. For example, some of you in the comments have said that I teach well or I trade well, which I appreciate very much. So, which is very nice. But imagine if the late Rakesh Jhunjhunwala openly came up on India TV and said, Sahil trades very well. So the impact is huge. The brand equity that the individual or the company which has been named that carries becomes very positive. And if you believe that at the highest level things are not just said randomly, that there is some importance to it, then we have no alternative but to say that the news is extremely favorable for those for that group of industries, and in particularly they named Adani Enterprises. So I thought that why not use this as an opportunity to look at this particular chart. So Adani Enterprises is of course a very, very interesting chart. We can see this that in the lows of 2020 this was valued at approximately 120 rupees, and this skyrocketed to a high of almost 4,200, which means a 40x move in the stock in less than 2 years. And this catapulted the stock straight into the Nifty 50 group of industries, the large caps on market cap. Then somewhere in January 23, December 22, we all know the famous Hindenburg case came out, and this particular stock took a real beating. And from highs of almost 4,200, it goes on to lows of 1,000, which is still 10 times or maybe 8 times the lows of 2021. Now, when we look at this particular chart, it is obvious that the preceding dominant move was up. And after that preceding dominant move, which was up, when we just simply connect the highs, because that is what we get, and then when we try to connect the lows, this is seemingly what we get here. When we try to connect the highs and the lows, what we get is something that looks like a triangle, and one in which the preceding move was up. And currently, if we see that this base of this triangle was formed in obviously February 23, and the intersection happens in February 27, which means that the entire length corresponds to 2 years or approximately 4 years or approximately 48 candlesticks. And we are currently in November 25, which means that we have covered almost 3 out of the 4 years. That means we just 2 years and 9 months to be more precise. And we know that this is approaching the near 66% level, at which, if at all this triangle has to hold true, then in the coming 1 or 2 months is the time where the stock should completely confirm that this triangle is in play, and it should do that by testing the high of this particular triangle and eventually breaking it. And why are we again saying eventually breaking it? That is, when a stock is in a range, it could go anywhere. It could stay in the range indefinitely, or it could break down. The only reason why we are saying that is because we want to be consistent in our analysis. And as you know, that whenever we are analyzing a stock, the first step is we use it on the monthly time frames. The next step is we see the current trend of the market, which we can clearly see is a range. There are irregular highs and irregular lows, that is lower highs and higher lows. This irregular range could be forming a pattern, which we feel is a triangle. And whenever a pattern is formed, then we have to bet on the breakout in the direction of the preceding trend. And it is obvious that the direction of the preceding trend is up. We have this clear, obvious proof of this. So we are obviously going to take a bet that if at all this triangle has to break, it'll break on the upside. And what we are really looking for is to assess if this indeed is a triangle also or not, because we have two tests and we need three. We are getting almost three tests on the bottom, but we'll see how that plans out. So, based on the monthly charts, if I am exclusively a trend trader, and then in that case I will ignore Adani Enterprises, and the reason would be there is no trend to trade. The stock is currently in a range. If, however, I'm a range trader, then in range trading types also there are categories. There are traders who trade certain types of ranges, and one of those types is trading a pattern or the formation of a pattern. Then, if I'm a range trader, why would I be a range trader? A range trader would typically take a position within the range, and the most favorable outcome is that after he or she takes that position, the range breaks. That would be the hope for a range trader in this case. So obviously, as a trend trader, as a directional trader, I would not be looking at Adani Enterprises, but as a range trader, given the significance of where it is at currently, given the positive news flow, and we can see that actually the price is correcting, or I mean, we can clearly see the red close here. It looks like this will be highly oversold on some time frames, and maybe it becomes a reasonable candidate for bottom picking, expecting that the pattern lows will hold on back of this news. Let us shift the time frame to weekly once we have done our assessment on the monthly. And on the weekly, obviously this pattern is slightly more clear. We can see the preceding up move, and now we can see that this is getting into what is known as a contraction kind of a pattern. Like some of you would be aware of contraction funnels, particularly popularized by Western traders. So this is one of those stocks which is now headed into a contraction, which means it's in a very, very dull phase. And when a stock is in a very dull phase, then typically artificial wicks, false breakouts, these things become characteristics of the stock. So it obviously becomes important to trade the stock in that fashion. I mean, it's to expect that a stock will break a range is a low probability outcome. So, but it's highly rewarding, and therefore positions have to be created like that. Your trading style and mindset has to be like that. Some in substance is that obviously the stock is pretty much approaching the bottom of the range, and what we are really looking for now is a clear-cut green closing which confirms that this range actually does hold true, because we have the two tests on the top. We are also seeing the two clear tests on the low. If the third test actually holds, which would mean that it will come a little lower, and then maybe in the subsequent week form a green candle, giving us incentive to defend the lows. Say for example, to take the position with this particular low as an SL after that is formed, and only if you're a range trader. So it gives us a justification to try and enter with this. I'll just darken it even more. To try and enter with this low as an SL, that's approximately 2150. The optimal place of entry, of course, would be maybe a 3 to 4% lower from here, but we are still looking or waiting for a correction because we are seeing the stock is currently in a red. So with this, we have obviously identified that we are going to be defending this with a pivotal low, and finally we move on the daily time frames. And on the daily time frames, we see that the stock is actually trading at obviously what was previously a gap support right here. This is obviously a gap support, and it has come into this gap. At this point, the stock had formed a W pattern, and this is how this range looks on the daily. So now what are we looking for? We are obviously, this is the range high here. We can see this very clearly now on the daily, that this stock is trading in a range 2650 and on the downside 2150. What and obviously this is going to be oversold right now. This is oversold. It's trading at the lowest point of several days, so this has to be oversold right now. So what are we looking for is, now we are looking for some kind of a green candle on the daily, and the closer it gets to the trend line that we have marked here, which would be approximately 2320 levels, the more interested we will get on this particular stock, and this blue line on top becomes a very, very good place to book a partial target, and this blue line on the bottom becomes a great place to exit. In other words, Adani Enterprises backed on good news, favorable news from very, very good source. That's the head of state of, not head of state, but the foreign minister of a very important country in which this company has significant investments and plans to create more investments. We are fully aware that there is an IMEC corridor that is proposed, and if it is proposed, then work on it will eventually happen. Maybe perhaps once the issue in the Palestine region resolves, then the work could happen. And Adani Group of Industries seems to be in the right kind of business to be able to strongly benefit from that, and all the additional efforts that the governments are taking to make the seas safer actually augurs very good for companies which are into ports and seas and shipping businesses. So yes, so sum and substance is that, backed on good news, we as range traders would be interested on taking a bet that the support could hold, provided the stock gives some kind of a confirmation. And I think it's already oversold, so we just have to track it for maybe in the next 3 to 5 days, and just wait for a green candle, perhaps a green closing above the high of that candle, and just take a bet into it with a clearly marked trade plan. With that, I hope that we have learned something new. The intention is that, obviously, as an individual, I actively trade trends. I also promote trend trading, but I have also traded patterns. I do enjoy trading some kind of patterns, but trading patterns and trading the trend is pretty much as different as playing chess on blitz or rapid versus playing a standard game of chess. So if you're trading pattern, then you have to have patience, because patterns usually show deep pullbacks and they stay at extreme levels for very short duration. So you have to be very disciplined with your targets and your stops, because if this actually level is to come, it'll be there for a very short duration of time, and it'll just either take off or take away from these levels, because it has a tendency to revert back to the mean of the range. So market allows everyone to trade, be it a trend trader or a range trader. And in this video, based on this news, which we used as a filter, we spotted Adani Group of Enterprises as a reasonable chart for range traders and pattern traders to try to develop and deploy their trading systems into. As trend traders, we would obviously simply ignore the stock, because there are simply much stronger stocks in the market to be creating a long only position. So again, I hope that we have learned something new. I wish you all the best, and thank you for your time.